I think we all want to know about what happened overnight, because we were like, what?
A lot happened overnight.
We heard the brief version at the but just
so I mean, we were told that it was really windy on the coast. First, it was just the coast. As I got 4 hours into my stay at White Mountain, and they came up to me and they're like, it's really windy out there, and you should be prepared for that. Thanks, there's nothing I can do about it except for just go into it, right? But then before we left, there was like a major warning given, like it's windy the whole way and be prepared. And like they basically said, bring more stuff in your sled and be prepared for whatever lies ahead. So we were already pretty prepared if I would have had to bunker down. But took off and it was great. I mean, it was windy, but the dogs are fine in the wind, and it was blowing around pretty good down low, and so there was wind or snow blowing around.
Can you just kind of take us back to why you start hearing this?
Yeah.
And I mean, you have all this history with the end of the Iditarod thing. Can you how are you feeling when you start to hear that, and that Dallas is 2.5 hours back?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not very concerned. I mean, I was concerned about what the run would turn into, but at that point, we're going to Nome, one way or the other. And I got Dallas behind me. Luckily, I have a little bit of a buffer, so I was, that 2.5 hours ended up being enough. But I mean, it was like, oh, here we go. It's never an easy go at the end. It's going to be a challenge. There's not going to be just a walk to Nome, So, but we were prepared, and I mean, I had a little bit. I was just bound and determined to win this race at that point, and so I wasn't really letting it get to me. And I did a pretty good job of that the whole entire race. I feel like is just drowning out all the stuff, and I just had to continue doing that. So, and so we got going, and it was windy, and it just got progressively worse the more we got into the hills, and once we started climbing, it was no visibility really. I mean, you couldn't really see the leaders. You were just relying on them staying on the trail, and then you would just see all of a sudden the trail markers have the distance between markers perfect, because it was literally there's a trail marker, and then I'm just hopefully we're still going in the right direction and the trail hasn't turned. There's another trail marker. It was just literally marker to marker. And then what the real challenges really started to happen was when you get up there and the trails are a little bit drifted to the side. And so you're side hilling, and the wind is coming from that side, and your sled is acting like a parachute basically at that point. So it was, or a sail, I should say. So it was, and I was fighting it pretty big. And I had a broken runner from the night before, and I didn't.
What part of the runner was broken exactly?
The actual metal, the aluminum part was cracked in half, but luckily on the dog pedal design sled, he puts a piece of plastic over the top in that area. It's right below my foot, basically. So it makes it so even if it does break, it still holds together. And then the night before, I had a tough time getting the runner plastic on, but with the runner plastic on the bottom and that other plastic on top, it kind of made it so the runner was still somewhat functional. But I couldn't put a whole lot of pressure on that runner because I didn't want to bust that, and if I busted that, then I would have been really screwed. So I was trying to drive the sled on the side hill with a 50-mile-an-hour wind with pressure on one runner, which was not very much fun. And so, but at one point, I mean, we kept going, and it was great, and I was so proud of the dogs. I mean, they were just charging into it. It was amazing. They did not hesitate at all. They were listening to, I mean, through the wind, I was yelling commands, just G and ha, and it was if I said G a little bit, they would just a little bit, and they were just perfect as far as commands. And so we were having a blast. It was a fun go until I had one of these side hills, and the wind gusted up real high, and it caught me, and I got top heavy, and we just tumbled down off the trail into the abyss. I mean, I can show you a video of what it looked like when we got down off the trail. We weren't very far, but the problem is that I went, and then all the dogs got drugged down with me. So now the dogs and I are just in a big pile, not very far off the trail, I hope. You have no bearing on how far you've gone because you can't see anything. And so I stopped, finally got everything stopped, and the dogs immediately just bunkered down. I'll show you the video. They immediately just bunkered down, and the drifts are already coming over the top of them, and I'm like, what do I do? I look up, and the trail's gone. I don't really have any bearing of which way is where the trail is at all. So at that point, I turned a headlight on my handlebar so that I could see the sled. Because if you walked away 10 feet, the sled was gone. But with the light, you could walk away a little bit farther and see. So I turned the headlight on the handlebar, and I walked in every direction a little ways, shining, and the gust would come up, and then there'd be a little bit of a lull, and you'd hope that you'd just get a reflector on a trail marker. And one of those times I did, I backtracked up maybe 25, 30 yards, and the sled went out of sight, but I had been like pounding my foot into the hard pack so that I had some bit of trail that I could follow. Because like, if you just walk normally, the trail was gone immediately. So I was like pounding my feet in the snow so that I had these big footprints that I could follow back to the sled, because I knew that if I got too far away, I wouldn't be able to see the headlight on the handlebar either. So I found where that was, got down there, but now I've got 11 dogs who are literally bunkered down. Like their faces are totally entrenched in snow. Like I'm like cleaning their muzzles off because the snow and ice are just starting to build up everywhere. Their eyes are all frozen shut and everything, and I'm like, how am I going to get these guys turned around, gotten back up to the trail? Because I'm like, once we're on the trail, I think I just have to keep the sled upright, and I think they'll start charging down the trail again. But at this point, they're like, we just got drugged down the mountain. Not very far, but they got drugged backwards, So, through the chaos, I just was like talking to the dogs, and I got them all stood up, and I kind of drugged the gang line around and got the sled turned back so we were pointed towards the trail where I had found the trail. At that point, like the insider guys that were following me had come back, and they were standing there at this point. I was like, do not touch, because I do not want this to end for me. Like, I'm fine right now. Like, I'm not in any sort of dire straits, other than I need to get this dog team back on the trail before Dallas CV comes mushing by. Like, that in the back of my head was all I was thinking at that point. Like, it wasn't a life or death or survival thing. It was beating Dallas CV. Like, that's all that mattered at that point. And so I got them all, but like 3 of them, I don't use necklines, so they're like, they're running backwards, and like that point, like all I could do is just like be as zen as possible and not get upset with them. Because if you got upset with them at that point, they would just bunker down even more. And a 10-pound or 50-pound dog weighs 300 pounds if they want to, in those situations. So I just went through and talked to them all, and yell them all basically, because the only way they could hear you is if you're yelling. Because it was the whole time you just have this rumble going, the wind's blowing out of control. And so I got the leaders finally, Morello and Slater, got the whole line all lined out. They're all facing the wrong direction, and I'm going through and lifting them up and putting them forward in their spot. And they turn around and go back down there, and for maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes, I'm just constantly doing that. And eventually they all get okay, we're going to go that direction, And I'm just trying to talk to them as calmly as I can in the situation. I was pretty proud of them, and in the end, they trusted me. I got really lucky. And I was up there pulling the leaders, come on, guys, and all of a sudden they all just a light went off, and they all just started pulling, and we got the sled, and I got up to where I was standing on the trail, and, like I said, once I got them up on there, they were like, let's get out of here, they were totally stoked on it, and then it was up to me to just keep the sled from tumbling down the mountain again, and luckily this was all happening, as you guys know, not very far from getting out of that and down to the shelter cabin, so I didn't know that. So that was the one thing that, I didn't know how far I had to go still through this in order to get out to somewhat safety, But we made it, and there was a last bit of pretty bad side hill, and I finally got, the position I could, be leaning over the handlebar and pushing down from the handlebar instead of on my foot on that runner, so I could use that runner without putting a bunch of pressure where it was broke, to try and keep the sled, kind of pointed up so it didn't go down again. It was, my arms are sore. I mean, they were sore from the race, but they're really sore now from that ordeal. But so we got up to the top, and as soon as we kind of crested, I looked and I could see that was the coast already, because it was only maybe 15 minutes, and we were there, and it was a huge relief. And I was pretty sure that Dallas hadn't come by, and got down to the shelter cabin and sort of regrouped and snapped the dogs and said, okay, guys, now we need to run up the coast. So, that's what happened. And then the coast run was just simple. It was blowing and snowing a little bit of moving snow, but in the end, it's level ground there. So it felt like a cakewalk at that point. It was just cruising down the coast, and the dogs were so good. They just never. If I hadn't lost my footing, and and the wind blowing me over, we would have cruised right through all that without any issue. So it was definitely my fault that we went off the edge there. But luckily we were able to pull together just enough time to give it so I didn't have him right on my tail, but I gave up half my lead basically in that hour or whatever that I spent trying to get myself situated. But the whole time I was like, yep, here we go, pulling a Sass again, making it interesting in the last leg of the freaking race every single time. But
were you getting any updates at that point from, satellite phone, inReach, that kind of thing?
Yeah, when I got down to the shelter cabin, I messaged my buddy Mike, who I had been in touch with for a good portion of the race, giving me updates here or there, and he just said Dallas is 11 miles behind you and moving. So get your ass in gear and get out of there. And it was, and then insider guys are loving it because they're all there watching me get that message, and I'm like, God, I gotta get out of here right now, because I didn't know what it was going to be like on the coast. I didn't know if it was going to be more of that blowing snow stuff, or I've clearly been down there, 6 times, but it's not like in the Yukon Quest. I know every inch of it, and the Iditarod, it's still sort of a little. There's all a little bit new to me still, so. But then we just had a great run into Nome.
No.
Must be a test.
That's a test.
Yeah,
They've been
there's.
testing all day.
Are they?
Yeah.
Was there a time when you sort of knew in your head, victory's in the end, I have this?
I don't think I really let it set in until I saw the city lights, and I had went through safety, and then he hadn't been through safety for an hour, and at that point I was like, oh, okay, so I'm not good at math, but I did a lot of math on this trail. Okay, so if I'm going 5 miles an hour and he's going 7.5, then I can, those types of math was going in my head all the time, especially in this last run. And it kind of relaxed once I saw the city lights. But of course, then it's a long time still. So that whole time I'm kicking in, still we got this, but my anxiety went a little bit low because I was pretty all the way across the code, the blowhole and all that. I was kicking, trying to kick and stuff like that, which doesn't do you any good on that section. But I was still trying to give it every effort I could to get a little bit closer to Nome.
Is this the same level of effort that you've done in other 1,000-mile races, or did you put in a little bit extra?
I think it's about the same. I think for me in this one, it was I put a lot more mental power into this race. I think there was a lot, like I said last night. There's just so much support that I had to somehow compartmentalize in my head of how to deal with it, because it was when you've got people that are Dallas Stevie's handlers coming up to you before the race going, you got this, I shouldn't even say that now because Dallas is what the hell, but everybody, everybody, it was. So I think for me, mentally, I had to really just bury that stuff and turn it into powerful energy and not be pressure. Because one of my real good friends was just man, how are you dealing with the pressure? And I was I don't really even feel the pressure. I'm sort of burying all that into making it into energy instead of positive energy, instead of letting it be a pressure for me. So I think physically, I put every race, I kind of leave it all on the table. But mentally, this race was a lot more challenging for me, also because I had the lead pretty much almost the entire way. Once I passed Dallas outside of Ophir, I never saw another dog team. After I passed Dallas and Ophir, I never saw another dog team until I saw Dallas again in White Mountain.
Was it also you wanted this one more than you wanted other races? Is that why you were able to put in that mental effort?
I think, I think I knew that this was the time. I had a pretty good a really good race season so far, and it was just one of those deals. In my head, I just believed that if everything came together, that I could win this race. So, I think that was. I think I probably did, just because this was the first time I felt like I could win the Iditarod, even from the start. I felt like I almost jinxed myself a few times, because in the pre-interviews, I never used to say I can win this race. I never, and every time I'd say it, I'd be like, oh my god, a knot in my stomach could go in there. Why did you just say that? That was so stupid, But then everything else about it was I can win this race. I'm pretty confident that we have a dog team that can win this race. So. It is about confidence. I think all this is about confidence and believing
So you have pretty much won everything you entered this year.
I've won everything I entered this year, yeah.
And people talk about that magic carpet ride for winners of the Iditarod, and it seems like that was not an easy trail this year.
No.
So can you talk about your dogs? Because I think it takes that team to provide the magic carpet ride.
Oh, it definitely does. This was not a magic carpet ride. Like, it was a lot of fun. But, like, I've had them, like in the Quest, I've had a magic carpet ride. When I ran in 19 and 20, both of those races went pretty smoothly. Dogs ate well. Everything was going good. I finished with all of them in 19. Like, those were magic carpet rides. This one was not a magic carpet ride. It was a challenge from the get-go. It was warm, which is not our forte. Like, we're really into the cold weather, and it was 30 degrees, at the beginning, and it never really got cold. When we were coming to Nome here, it was the first time I was like, wow, it feels like winter. And you could see it in the dogs. They were just like, there's so much more. They were chipper the whole way, but you tell the difference when they're in their element, So yeah, this race was not a magic carpet ride, but like I said, we just felt super prepared, and I knew that we had the ultimate. I'm gonna cry here, not with the dogs, but we just had the ultimate trust. I feel like is what got us to the end, because they just know they knew what the job was, and they got it done. It was unbelievable. They didn't eat very well over the first 4 days. I was like buffet feeding them, hand feeding them, trying to get them every bit of calories I could. And that's part of the reason, like, me sleeping on the trail and doing all that, it allows me to focus all of my time and effort on that. If you stay in the checkpoint, you just don't have that time and energy, because you have other distractions, or you get self-conscious about people looking at the way you're dealing with them, and then everyone knows that your dogs aren't eating, and I'm not going to complain about that. I'm not going to whine about it. It's just what happens in a dog race. Like, sometimes the dogs don't eat, and you have to manage them the best you can. And luckily, they never lost their attitude, and did just an amazing job of keeping it positive all the way through, even when they weren't feeling 100%. And I had all the diarrhea stuff that everybody else had, but I just didn't let it get to us. Between the dogs and I, it was one of those things where we just, no excuses. It was basically what I said to myself the entire time. I was like, we can do this. Everybody's dealing with this stuff. It's warm. There isn't a dog team out here that likes to run in the warm weather, and we had, and like I said, it's that connection. They just trusted in me that I was going to make the right decisions. And I made some wrong decisions that I thought were going to catch up with me along the way as well. And luckily, it didn't. And that was just because of our trust and the tremendous amount of training that we had this year that allowed us to be able to do that.
What were those little mistakes?
Well, they weren't even that little. Again, Galena is sort of my nemesis at this point. In 16... that's where my problem started, when I blew through Galena in the heat of the day, and I took a lot of power out of the dogs, and then that kind of was the beginning of the fall for that problem that I had in White Mountain. And I don't know what I was thinking, but I did the same thing again this year. I came through, and I just had the momentum, and I don't like to stay in checkpoints, so like I put the staying in checkpoints off for so long, and I had this idea in my head, Kel-Tag. I want to get to Kel-Tag for my 8, because I want to set myself up for having as much energy as possible down the trail. We had 24 late. I wanted to take that 8 in Kel-Tag, and that led to me blowing through Galena. And I didn't go very far, and it wasn't like I burned them up as far as the heat, because it really wasn't super hot. But when I went through Galena, that forced my hand to do some long runs in order to keep my lead. Because if I would have been, because basically I went through Galena, I had that lead on Dallas, and he came and he stopped before Galena, which meant he was going to be 24 or 18 at one of the, either Nolano or Kel-Tag. And I knew that if I didn't do another big push, he would come and he'd see me. I did not want him to see me. Like, head games or whatever, I knew that it was driving Dallas City crazy that he couldn't see me, that he didn't see me. And so But he's not a stupid guy, and he's not going to do some stupid thing just to see me. So, but he really would have liked to have seen me and my dog too. But I was bound and determined to try and not let that happen. So, anyways, I was camped 8 miles out of Galena or something, and I was basically, like, my plan was to go from there all the way to Caltech. And I knew that was going to be too long of a run. And I was probably going to lose some speed. And so the whole way I bought gear and supplies and everything along. It was like, I'm just going to take a 2-hour break whenever I feel like the dogs are starting to, we were going slow. It was a slog on the river. It was like one of those deals where you're just like, you're moving great, it's hard pack, it's awesome, and then all of a sudden it's like a slog, and you're like in this sand, and you're moving at 5 miles an hour again, and like you just want to, you just, it's crazy how the mental game set in at that point. But the dogs never lost their attitude, and that's what I'm always looking at, is we can be going 3 miles an hour and still be having a good time, or we can be going 10 miles an hour and have a good time, but if you're not, the attitude isn't there, then you got to know that and know when it's time to stop. And it was another one of those times where it was like, they were just like, where our training kicked in, like all those miles and all that connection and everything, they just kept marching on. And through the night, it was a long run. We got into Caltech at like 2:30 in the morning. It was almost an 11-hour run, 12-hour run. But I didn't take another break in there, so I kept that small lead that I had, which was about 2 hours now at that point. And when Dallas shut it down in New Lotto, but at that point now Dallas had done it right, where he had done these short runs all the way till his 8, and he had never really pushed the dogs, and I had just done this monster run right in the middle of the race to keep my lead and to keep away from him. But now I'm forced with, like, what's going to happen now? Did I take that energy, that steam, like I did in 16, where it just kind of like their energy just went downhill from there? And they did great. They still ran. Everything was great, but you could tell that mentally they were wore out in 16. But we took our 8 in Caltech, and like, my secret weapon is my dogs are really calm, and they don't bark, and they don't bang in the harness, and they kind of look like they're tired all the time. And for me, I know when they're tired, and I know when they're not tired. But for someone who doesn't spend all the time with them, they basically just always look tired. And so everyone was just skeptics, because you're in Caltech and the dogs are all just standing, and I booty them too fast and get them done ready too early so they get iced, like I call it iced, like in a football game when you're not quite ready but you're all ready to go, and they just stood there, and I knew at that point, just by their demeanor and their actions, that they had not taken that edge off of them, and they were ready to go. But no one else there thought that. Everyone else there was pretty sure that I had taken that edge off. Like guys like Bruce Lee, who I trust tremendously. He was like, "You broke my heart when you went through Galena," because, and I was like, I know, and I sat there in the Caltech checkpoint, just going, all right. I just had to believe in what we did, and knowing that we rode a rail there, But yeah, and then we took off, and again, we weren't making breakback speed, but I knew that I had to do a short run. I knew that I couldn't do some big long run again to get to Unaclete, so I stopped at the old woman cabin and did almost a 4-hour break there. And Dallas even told me when he pulled it, as he came by there, he's like, if he saw a straw there, he knew he was in trouble, because he knew that I took the conservative route and that I'd get to let the dogs sort of build back up, and didn't try and just continue to like build that lead, and we did. We had a great rest there, and then the dogs turned it on, and then was like the really fun part of the race, where the trail got a lot faster. Well, it turned to ice basically, so there was no more resistance, which helps that point in the race, and that run into Unaclete was just phenomenal. They were flying. Their attitudes were good. Their eating had turned around. The eating turned around sometime after that long run. And I think it was that long run, and in the end, that really just, they basically had a turning point, mentally and physically, where we either need to start eating, or we're going to tank. And we're not going to, I'm not going to be, personally, I just was like, hey, I'm either going to be able to keep the weight on them, because I had gotten some skinny dogs during that time when they had the diarrhea and weren't feeling up to par. But again, I was able to just like literally buffet feed them, hand feed them. They didn't take a snack note, so then you break it down into smaller pieces and set it in front of them. And then if they don't do that, you break it down into smaller pieces, and then you try something different. And I had been doing that all race, and then all of a sudden, after Celtic, they just started hammering the food. Like everybody standing up, you move you got a good eaters when you move the sled a little bit, and they hear the bag going. And every head looks up at you. And you're just like, oh my God, we're turning the corner here. Like, this is going to happen. Like, they're going to start eating now. And they did. And they started completely plowing the food. And at that point, I was like, wow. Like, we're over the hump. Now I just got to keep it on the trail, literally. And, so we blew through Uniclete, tons of momentum. Dogs had lots of power. It's always a risk blowing through there because you're carrying when no one else is going to carry during that time, and it's potentially bad trail. But luckily, because of the ice, you could have had 500 pounds in the sled and it wouldn't have mattered because all you were doing was riding the brake to try and keep yourself upright. I mean, it was crazy. Coming in to Uniclete was like a maze of ice. Because they had to come around a lot of different obstacles, and they had so much rain and everything, and so you were just constantly like having to jihad the dogs around and like cracks, and I mean it was unbelievable, out of control the whole way. And then got in there and leaving. I mean, it was just a nail biting run. We got up into the Blue Ridge Hills, and I usually stop about 6-7 miles out of town, but they were just cruising so good, and because of the ice, we were just able to keep moving. And so I knew this is where I could like either build or maintain the lead a little bit more by going as far as I could. So I said I'm going to go to the bottom of the first hill. We got to the bottom of the first hill, and like they were going as fast as we were going on the flats, and so I let them carry the load to the top of the hill. And so we stopped at the bottom of basically the second climb where it really starts to climb. And we camped there, and then it was just 3 hours. That's all I could afford at that point for rest, and we got up and went. And that run, I think this run was the one that made it, for me mentally, was the one that changed everything, because I literally did nothing. I stood on the runners, and that, you've probably never been up there, but the Blueberry Hills is like one climb after another, all the way. You just think you're to the top, and then there's another one, and then there's another one. And usually you're just like, oh, and now I'm just like literally sitting on my seat, and the dogs are just charging without any hesitation. No one's looking back. It felt like you had the team that you left Willow with. It was pretty exciting. And I knew then that like, just got to hold this together to down the coast, and we're gonna have a real good shot at fending him off all the way. And so we had a great run into Shack, and then the next head game came into play. Like with this whole two-way communication thing, there are no secrets on the trail. I mean, everybody knows everything, so you can't be like blowing through Shack and think that they're not going to know you're going to go to the shelter cabin. Like Dallas is texting his people, where do you stop? So I've been thinking about it for a long time, and I was like, no one chooses to stay on the ice, right? Like that just generally doesn't happen. And so I had thought about it long before. I was like, that is a play that I could do, where I bet I can, like, one, spark a whole media frenzy back here that everyone thinks I'm doing my dog team up or something, because I'm going to stop on the ice, and that'll flood back to Dallas in some way, shape, or form, and he'll take an extra hour of rest in the shelter cabin potentially because of that, because he's a smart guy and knows, like, don't push when your competitors are maybe at a low point. So some sort of strategy kind of came into my head during that time, and I was like, yeah, we're going to do it. And what I wanted to do, again, was make it so I didn't have these massive runs going into White Mountain. Like, that was my ultimate goal, was to not do big runs going into White Mountain. And by doing that extra 14 or 16 miles past the shelter cabin allowed me to make it 2, 55-mile runs. Do that rest, do another 55-mile run, do one more rest, and then go all the way to White Mountain. Dallas, stopping back at the shelter cabin, he was faced with 2 71-mile runs, which because he was already behind me a little bit and then added that other 16 miles, so it forced his hand, and I know it's not the hand that he wanted to have to play. No one wants that at that point. And so I sat there. I got to the spot where I wanted to stop on the sea ice, and I put my sled into the wind, sort of parallel to the wind, and I brought the gang line around, and I just said, okay, guys, and they're super good at just, like, all piling on each other all the time at home, and so they all kind of got in their ball, and they're like, are we supposed to lay down now? And I just took all the straw, and I put it on the ground real quick, because they had to be standing there because it was blowing so hard, I put it on the ground, and I was like, lay down, and they're like, oh, man, straw, and so they all just lay, it was the cutest thing on the planet, and so then I had all 12 dogs in a ball right on the windward side of the sled, and they had the best race of the rest of the whole race. I guarantee it, on the sea ice. I took my sleeping bag and put it out so it was kind of covering most of them, and then I put double jackets on the 3 or 4 and the fatter ones that were on the outer edge of it, so that they were extra protected as much as they could, but they were already protected by everybody else, so they were getting at least to the wind and everything. And then I just hand fed them all underneath there. I got to go. I made food, and I just put a bowl, got up underneath there and put a bowl down for that dog, and he ate, and put it down for them, and we got them all fed just in that position, and then snacked them a few more. They were eating really good, and by that time, so it was really fun to do that, because every time they'd be look at me, it's my turn, and no one, they all get along so well that they're just, that's his, and then yours will come in a minute, and they were all fine with that.
Have you ever practiced that technique before of resting out on the ice with the sled over like that, or was that the first time?
No, I had camped out on the ice before, but it wasn't windy. And when it's not windy, it's fine. Still people think it's crazy to camp out there, but when it's not windy, it's totally fine. But it was windy, and the only practice we have is that we're a really cohesive team, and so when we're put in a position where we have to do something that's out of the ordinary, they're totally down with it, because everybody loves everybody, and there's no animosity in there, and there's no one that's going to start a fight or anything like that. And I had 100% confidence in that, and that's why you can do that, So yeah, no, they rested. I think I put them in there underneath that thing like 15 minutes into the rest, and 15 minutes before the end of the rest, I got them all up and lined them all out and gave them one more big wet snack on the line and booted them up, and we took off. And it was another slog, like it always is, going to Koyuk, just to run out on the beach type thing, and this is where I knew, I was like, Dallas is coming, and, I think our speeds are pretty close at this point, but it's Dallas CV, and it doesn't matter how big of a lead you have, he's never going to give up. Like, he's never, ever going to wave the white flag. So I knew I just needed to keep the team moving. So we blew through Koyuk, but now I'm faced with the 55-mile runs instead of those big ones, and that was my advantage on Dallas, because his speeds were going to go down in the second 15 miles that he had to run, that I didn't have to in those runs, and so which they did a little bit, and that gave me that edge that I needed to sort of hold my lead all the way into White Mountain.
You talked. Your thing is run your own race.
Yep.
But you've talked a lot about how you're playing mind games.
Yeah, totally.
And you're talking about how there's two-way communication.
Yeah.
And you're talking about how the weather isn't quite what the dogs wanted. So
totally.
I hear run your own race, but I also hear, like, how much of your own race, how much of that advice did you take?
I ran my schedule that I literally to the T. I ran my schedule. So, but basically, once you get to the coast, if you're not paying attention to your competition, then you're probably, unless you're like way out in front and you don't have any hope of them catching you, you have to be thinking about them. And especially when you got Dallas CV behind you, you cannot just be complacent about who he is. So yeah, it's a combination of, the biggest thing for me is run your own race. Don't even think about the competition until you get farther, as far as like changing your schedule around until you get to the coast. And I didn't do that. Like, I knew he was back there, but I talk about Dallas a lot only because I did not want him to see me. I wanted to play that ghost, and I think that, because that gets to you. I've been that person where I've been chasing down. We were all those people. And when Thomas won, when he took off out of Caltech, and we never saw him again in that race, and I knew what that did to all of us. Like, oh man, it's so disheartening to come into a checkpoint when you got to stop for 5 hours, and the guy who's in the lead is already gone. So that just gives you very little hope, even if you are Dallas CV. And so I knew that, like, if I could just do that, So yeah, it's a combination. I mean, I ran my own race. There is no doubt about it. But when you're going up against the best, you have to have them in the back of your head, especially for that last 300 miles. And you have to know, like, make some moves that are going to maybe not be so beneficial for him. You know.
But you overlapped at White Mountain.
Yeah, of course.
There's a meme on Iditarod memes of all of the fans fighting, but you two having a nice meal together. Can you characterize?
Yeah. I mean, Dallas and I are totally kosher. Dallas and I have a history. You know, we were on a reality TV show together a few years back, and I mean, Dallas doesn't like to lose. You know, none of us like to lose. But he congratulated me in White Mountain. I mean, I was already sleeping. He came in 2.5 hours after me. I had done my dog chores. I was in the tent. And I was basically waking up from my very short sleep that I did there, because I just fumbled around for 4 hours waiting to go. But, and yeah, we had a good, I mean, he congratulated me and said, you know, heck of a dog team. And, it was friendly. It wasn't a lot of small talk, you know, but, there was a little bit. And at that point, like, I think he knew that I had to mess up in order to lose. You know, but I also knew that he wasn't giving up. So
did he try to play any hit games with you there, like just by stuff he said or anything to try to turn around?
I don't think so. I mean, he just basically said, he's like, yeah, I was just trying to think back. You know, this is a Dallas comment, you know, to what it was like when I won my first one. Like that was his comment, you know, and I was like,
turning the knife.
Yeah, and so I was like, yeah, well, it's pretty exciting, you know, and. But yeah, no, it was great. I mean, I mean, everyone's asked me, does it make it sweeter? Of course, it makes it sweeter that I beat Dallas in this race. You know, if he's really going to go into this little retirement for a couple of years, it would have bummed me out to not get to have my first Iditarod win with the best in the business that I got to beat like that. You know, that's a compliment to Dallas. You know, like he is the best right now, and we were able to stay ahead of him and beat him in a pretty exciting race, I feel like. So, yeah.
Could we maybe bring it back to the dogs, because you said you talked about the trust earlier that the dogs have in you, and then what you described earlier too was the confidence that you then in turn had in the dogs. Mm-hmm. That at the end of the race, after going through all that was a pretty, you know, that was college level stuff that they did coming in here. So could you maybe explain to folks, as a general audience, to what that means, how you instill trust in a dog team and form this team that is capable of doing that? Because not every dog team is capable of doing that. So.
Well, I live, eat, breathe, and sleep these dogs. I don't do anything else. My entire life is devoted to them. We live together. They sleep in the cabin most of the time. Like, most people don't do that. They think it's bad for them or whatever to not be outside and the elements or whatever. But for me, it's more about the dogs just wanting to be where they want to be, and they always want to be around me. And so it's all about loose time. Like, the dogs spend most of their time free at home. You know, like when we're going on runs, they get free and they run around for quite a while before we go on the run. We get back from the run, they run around for quite a while afterwards. And that just, I mean, everybody likes freedom, right? Everyone likes to have their own time, and dogs, I don't think sled dogs necessarily have a lot of their own time, because they're, you know, either on the line with everybody else or they're on their spot in their chain, which they're very comfortable with, and it's where my dogs spend a lot of their time. But that other time where they're able to just go off and be the dog in the corner and do whatever they want to do, and they also form relationships with each other that are stronger, I think, than what happens if you're just doing the conventional way of doing it. And so I think that is one of the, like, it's about the trust between me and them, but it's also about the trust between all of them. They're all friends, and they all, like, they have buddies, and they, like, there's like sibling squabbles that happen, and there's all of that normal things that happen in a family dynamic that makes the family stronger. And I feel like that part of it is why we can go do the thing on the sea ice, and why they can, like, rally together when all of a sudden the shit's hitting the fan, and we're on the, you know, we've fallen off the trail in Topcock, and the wind's blowing 50 miles an hour, and they really just want to curl up into a ball and wait it out. But I'm sitting there going, come on, guys, we can do this. We can do this. And I think it's just instilled like, yeah, we can do this. Why not? Let's do it. And then one dog does it, and then that dog is best friends with the other dog that's like facing the wrong direction, but he sees his buddy doing it, so then he's like, okay, all right, I'll do it. And then he does it. And then it's just kind of like a flood. Like, that's what happened. One or two dogs decided during that 20 minutes that I was trying to get them to go. One or two dogs just decided, okay, we'll do it. And then as soon as they did it was like a chain reaction right down the line. Like, they all just decided, we're going to go this direction and get out of here right now. Yeah.
So describe that group of dogs that you have. They're not young.
Yeah, the oldest one is 7, Morello, the black dog, that's been in the lead. She's the oldest. Most of them are 4, 5, and 6. And then there was a 2-year-old. There was 2 2-year-olds. I dropped one earlier there, Jeep. Some of you guys might know who Jeep is, the sprint dog that I got from Joey Reddington. He didn't make the team this year. He's actually running with Motts Patterson right now. But his sibling, or his kids, 2 of them made my team, and then the other 6 are with other mushers in the race right now. And they're just excellent sled dogs, but they just had no idea what they're getting themselves into. They did awesome in these mid-distance races, but when you throw a dog that's 2 years old into a 1,000-mile team that wants to win, that dog is solid, mentally and physically. So we had those guys in there, but they bring a lot of the energy. Young dogs bring energy to it, and that's why I left them in there all through training, and as long as they could handle it, it was clear that they were bringing more of that upbeat, sort of high-energy stuff to the team, which is, and not in a way of, like, barking and banging, just their energy is it's youthful, and like we all know that when you're hanging out with young people, it's just, you get that feeling, and I think it's the same way with the dogs. And then it's a core group of the orange dogs, Slater and Woody and Pink. Those 3 are really the standouts, and those guys are now 6. Their career has been, 2 Yukon Quest wins, a 3rd and a 4th place in Iditarod, and now a win in the Iditarod. Like, those are the 5,000-mile races that they've run are those, and they've all 3 finished all of those races. So yeah, and then after that, everybody, first off, with the exception of the 2 sprint dogs, are all connected back to silver. So all the genetics they're all very similar in genetics, and they're cohesive that way, and I think that really helps genetically, being so connected. Their brains work the same, and it's like a family, real family, not like a bunch of different stuff kind of put, not like a blend. Blended families work, but it's not quite the same when they're all really blood connected. And I feel like with this team, there's a lot of that, and they've all been raised all together. Like the core of the team have been in all these races, and then the other ones have been sort of inserted in. There were 3 of them that had never run a 1,000-mile race that were just turned 4, that had been kind of on the B teams and kind of lurking for the last 2 years, and they just stepped it up and rose to the occasion in this, and all 3 of them finished. And
who are they?
Marble and Garnet, and Marble and Garnet are the 2 main ones, and then Jackson and Talk are the other 2 that are just really awesome sled dogs that have just risen to the occasion when really needed. And they they'd never been in a 1,000-mile race, especially Garnet and Marble, and they just it was just so fun seeing them be excited at the end, or even 800, 700 miles in, that's when you start to think, okay, I never go into a race expecting to drop dogs. Like, I train dogs so that they can run 1,000 miles. Like, that is my ultimate goal. But I also have to be realistic in dogs that have never run a 1,000-mile race, what they're going to feel like at 700 miles into a race like this. We're not just running it; we're running to win it. And so
3 out of the 4 have
Yep.
been to the finish line now.
Yep.
What do you think is going on in their mind now that let's say, you guys have like run just for 8 days, and that's like what you do. You run, and you run some more, and then you run some more, and then it's coming to an end. And you talked about that yesterday, where you said my dream was to win the Iditarod and win the Yukon Quest, and now I've done it, and it felt like, and now what?
Yeah, there's a little bit come back and win again. But I think in the end, I wish I had the answer to that. I don't know exactly if they care about any of that. I think in the end, they're just out there doing what they love to do, and they're following my lead, and they're riding my emotional roller coaster, and I think they felt the ease fall away when we saw the city lights, just like it did. The intensity level was high for the last 300 miles, trying to stay more than it is any time during the season, and they knew it, and they all rose to the occasion. But I feel like they also let that sigh of relief go, and for what reason? I don't know. They know they won this race probably, but I don't think they really care. I really don't think they care much. I think that they are just doing what they were trained to do, what they love to do, what they're instinctually meant to do, and they're trying to please me.
So I always ask almost everyone, when you come at the end of the journey and you get over Cape Nome and you see the lights of Nome.
Yeah, it was an amazing morning. I was thinking about all the people and everybody that has helped me over the years to make all this happen, and it's just an endless list of friends and family and dogs, other dogs, all my teams before. Like, they're the ones that taught me all the stuff that I know now. But yeah, it was totally overwhelming. I had a lot of people like, Susan Butcher and Joey Reddington and Hobo Jim were three of the people that I wish they could have been here to see it. Like that. Those people are very influential in all of this, and it was reflecting on them a lot throughout the race, because they were huge. Hobo just a huge inspiration with his music and the friendship that we built over the years with singing Wild and Free, how I embodied all of my everything, and then Joey Reddington is just my favorite human on the planet, and just a dog mentor, and then Susan. I got to be with her in the last years that she worked with dogs, and I was just beginning and didn't have a clue as to anything. And I still don't know that I remember, factually remember anything that she said, but it was about the aura that she brought to I got to go run her dogs and then come back and sit down in their living room, and she'd be like, okay, tell me, this is when she couldn't do it anymore, how'd the dogs do? Tell me what they did. Explain to me what they did. And then we would do that, and then she would tell us what to do differently next, or how to react to this, or do with that. And at the time, I was just soaking in the information and then going and regurgitating it out on the dogs. Like, okay, Susan said to do this, or whatever. And now looking back, I realize how monumental all of that was. And her history in the Iditarod, and all that. It's pretty awesome. Yeah, so it was special coming in, for sure. Yeah. Sorry. That would make everybody cry, probably.
That's, for running such a big race and as a team with another species, and covering all that ground, what I wonder is, how do you keep your stuff together for the dogs? Because they're feeding on your energy.
Yeah.
You just can never lose it.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times I'm feeding on their energy as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think I think it's a give and take. Because there's definitely times where when I thought I had made the big mistake, when I thought I had made a wrong decision on my run, coming into Caltech and everything, it was them that said, no, we're good. Mm-hmm. Everything's good. We still got the energy. We can go forth. We're not in any, you didn't take that edge off of us. They were the ones that pulled me, whether they knew it or not. They were just being themselves, and it was their energy then that I was like, wow. I think we're still in a good position. But if they would have been portraying a different feeling, if I would have taken that edge off, if I would have had a bunch of tired dogs, who knows? My attitude could have started to tumble, and then after that, things go downhill. So I think it's a give and a take. I think they really helped me, and then I think a lot of it is just reflecting on all these people that have been a part of this and helped me. One, it's not really wanting to let them down, but it's more of just wanting to carry on their spirit in a positive way.
So, and how do you in turn then maybe carry on, like now you are the champion and not the recipient of information? How do you think you could impart some of the wisdom or some of the stoke of mushing to generations that come after us?
Yeah, I mean, telling the story the way it is, like I'm doing right now, I feel like it's not all about winning. I mean, this was not about winning. This was about proving that we, have a really good dog team and that we're a really good team, that we can go out and accomplish whatever we set out to do, and winning happened to be the goal on this race. But in the end, I enjoy everything that I do. And I feel like that's what people need to realize, is that if I would have lost to Dallas Seavey, it would have been extremely disappointing for a little while. And then I would have realized that we got second in the greatest race on the planet. And it would have been pretty cool, And then you would have moved on and tried to win next year. So I think that it can't be, if I'm going to give it any advice, it can't be focused on only the win. It's about the journey. It's about all that it took to get to this point. And then all the stuff that we're going to do after this, Like, this is just the beginning, I feel like. It's always just the beginning, but the training for me and the lifestyle is the most important thing. Like, I thoroughly enjoy what I do and am very fortunate for what I have in a life, and the dogs make that possible. So the race is just something that we do along the way to prove, maybe. It's a proving ground for all the training and the life that we live, and we're able to come out here and prove, like, yeah, we're living the dream, and we're also at the top of our field. So, yeah.
Thank you. Well, actually, I have one more question.
Yeah, no worries. Keep going. I'm on a roll now, so you got me opened up.
Dream, I know. I'm sorry. So, living the dream, you live in a pretty isolated homestead, and I think sometimes it doesn't feel like living the dream when the car breaks down. You have to shovel yourself out. So, can you maybe just in a short explainer say how you live and what the challenges are to have dogs in the place where you have them?
Well, I live about 150 miles northwest of Fairbanks in an old homestead. It's the same place that Susan Butcher and Rick Swenson trained back in their heydays, and
it's sorry to jump in, but it's a 150-mile drive, and then isn't it a snow machine?
Yep, and then you get a snow machine about 7 miles into my place. Yeah, in the wintertime it's not full access, so you have to get there, park in a parking lot, and then drive a snow machine or dog team into the place. We're totally self-sufficient, run generator, solar power. I haul all the dog food up there. The food drop, it's kind of like a oxymoron. You haul thousands of pounds up there, and then you feed it some of it, and then sort it all out, and then you haul it all back to town for food as food drops and stuff. So there's just all this extra effort, but I don't want to spend time in town anymore. It's gotten to the point where, like, I just love the struggle. It's a struggle. There's no doubt. It's a struggle. But I enjoy the struggle. I enjoy not really knowing what every day is going to hold, not knowing that something's going to blow up, something's going to break, something's not going to go right. And I think that's part of the reason that we're such good racers, is because my life is kind of like one big dog race. Like, you're kind of constantly tasked with a new challenge and with a different thing that happens every day, and a dog race is the same way. So, like, my daily life just sort of prepares me for that. For the first time in 10 years, I had to shut the homes. I didn't have any help this year. I didn't have any consistent help. I had some people come up and save my butt. But I was alone at the homestead for a good portion of the season, which is a tremendous amount of work. But I also feel like that was one of the main reasons for some of our success, because I did literally everything with the dogs. There was no handler to feed them when I was away. I was never away. There was no handler there was an old handler of mine, a past handler that came, and she totally saved my butt and helped me run the dogs for a month and a half and keep the miles on them. But for the most part, I did all of the training for the dogs, and that I know is making a big difference. And the ability to do that is because I live at a homestead in the middle of nowhere, and I don't have to like drive my truck every day, and I don't have to go to the store every day, and there's no social pressure. That's the downside, is that I do lose tact with friends, and I'm not as in tune in the social world because I live out there. But because of that, everything is focused on the dogs, and I think that's the main reason that some of my success has been over the last 10 years, is because I've chosen this life where it's survival and dogs, and that's what I do. I try and survive, and I run dogs. And when shit hits the fan, it's not. I have a tremendous amount of people that help, from my dad to my mom, who are there if they need some business transaction to happen that I can't make happen out there. They are always there to help. My dad comes up for months at a time to come help, fix trucks and stuff. And then on top of that, I have friends in Fairbanks that'll do anything at a drop of a hat for me, and I try not to call on that, but they're there. And when I do need it, they're always there. And so that really helps. I don't do this all alone. I never want the myth that I'm like this crazy person who does everything on his own. On the ground, I do most of it, but there's a huge network of people that are helping me do it all. But yeah, and then, I just got a message I ended up buying this homestead from Ed and Will Salter, who were there, living there during the time when Rick and Susan and that whole dog culture was out in Eureka, and they were all thriving out there. And my ultimate goal was always to, bring the trophy back to Eureka, because if you count it up now, there's 5 Iditarod championships from Rick Swenson, 4 from Susan Butcher, 3 Yukon Quest championships from me, 1 from Dave Munson, and now another one from Iditarod. So there's 10 Iditarod championships and 4 Yukon Quest championships, all won on training on those trails out in Eureka.
Well,
which is
a little shrine there.
Yeah, which is pretty awesome. Yeah. And I'm so proud to be carrying that tradition on. I take a lot of pride in that. So yeah, it's a lifestyle, and you have to want to work pretty much all the time. And I'm just fortunate that I have the capabilities of doing that right now, and I hope that for a lot of years to come I can do it, and I can streamline. This will help. A little bit of money always helps to streamline a few things at the homestead, maybe improve some stuff so that my life isn't so crazy, and then I can just put more time into the dogs.
And then I have a question for Dad. Do you think he'll outgrow the face, or?
I don't know what to say. I just appreciate being able to listen, to hear it said to somebody else, because we have our own relationship, and my job is to help him pull out what he wants to do. And my own life is, you got to go for it. You got to make it happen. If you don't take a risk, you're not going anywhere.
He's a workaholic, so I got it from him. I got all of this from him, probably. But
it's
up
really
for adoption.
Pretty. That's all I can say. It's I don't know. I guess I've been doing it 24 years straight, never ever missed. Come up in January, I don't go back till end of April, May, and it's kind of like he's doing what he loves. And I sat down one day and said, "Why, Brent, you got to lighten up a little bit. You got to have another life." I said, "Dad, you don't understand. This is my life." And you know what? I respect that. And I've been doing what I've been fortunate, blessed in my world. And here we are. I'm just really, really proud.
All right, I'm done making you cry.
All right. Around every corner, yeah. No, it's been good. It's good to put it all out there.
Yeah.
I think about this stuff a lot, but it's different to say it all.
Well, it's a long summer.
Yeah. It's going to be.
And you're going into that long summer with a championship under your belt, no regrets, and other people who have scratched.
Yeah.
Or who put everything into it and they had to abandon the race. They have a long summer ahead of them too.
Yep.
So do you have any advice as like a rounded? You have experienced every emotion on that. Is there anything that helped you
afterwards? Focus forward. And so I tell everyone, focus forward. Forget about the past. You can't forget about the past. You got to learn from all your mistakes and learn from all that. But the best thing you can do is just start thinking about next year. Start thinking about tomorrow and not think about yesterday. That's the best advice. And, keep your attitude. That's the second your attitude goes away, you're in trouble. Positive attitude is key. And, I think that, for me, has been key. And that's, like, my life in general. I mean, if I get upset every time something breaks, I would be in trouble. I wouldn't be alive right now if I got upset every time something broke. And, like, again, I think that's why my life just lends right into dog racing, because it is just one big dog race. This is what my life is.
Here we have our headline, right?
It's all going to be the same tomorrow. You still have to show us the video, though.
Oh, yeah, I can show you that.
Oh, yeah, Chuck's. So you had the presence to whip out the camera and record that. I mean, I did that once too, where it's so ridiculous. You got to document that, right?
That's what it was, because I was like, if this is going to end it all, if this is going to be the time that I lose my chance at winning the Iditarod, I'm going to at least have some documentation of why this is happening, because I'm not falling over, I'm not giving up.
So this was really that where you thought this can
end badly? I thought this could be. I mean, it's fine. Like, I didn't feel like it was going to end in we were in life or death situation. I felt like I was going to see Dallas's headlamp go by, just 30 yards off the trail where I was bunkered down there, not knowing. And there was probably a minute where I was like, I don't think that we can turn this around fast enough in order to maybe less than that, maybe 30 seconds. And then I just took this video. And I think I just slapped myself in the face and was like, what are you talking about? Like, we're going to get our asses back to that trail right now and get to Nome. Like, there's no way around it. So
I was right in that spot, too. But my sled was hung up in a tripod, and I had to chop the tripod apart because it kind of
very close
scared me almost. So anyway, you didn't have to chop the tripod.
No, I didn't, but... hold on here.
I just did a search and rescue story about someone there.
Okay.
Yep, there she is.
Jesus. Oh my gosh.
Come on, you've got to be a little bit scared at least.
No, I all I cared about was getting back on the trail and being devastated at this point.
That is incredible.
Is that the one where I walked up and down the dog team? Did you see that? Or no? Yeah. So there's another one. That's where I was just bunkered down behind it. So here's the. This one gets you an idea of what the dogs were doing.
Oh my god.
And they had just said, and that's what you're trying. So from that position there was what I was trying to convince them, that we're going to turn you guys around and we're going to go back up to that trail and we're going to continue. From the position they were in there, just totally bunkered down. It was, the smart one got behind the sled there, and the rest of them just, it was pretty crazy.
Well, that's pretty impressive. I don't know, is it like that in the White Mountains like that too?
Oh, yeah, I have never been. I think I was in a storm like this on Eagle Summit once in 2006 when I won the 300, the very first race that I did. That storm was comparable to this one. I have never since been in a storm where... And I think, like I said, if I would have stayed on the trail, it would have been fine. I mean, all credit to Dallas Seedy. He stayed on the trail. He made it through that with no problem. Because his dogs stayed on the trail, and as long as you stayed on the trail and you could see where you were going, or, you could see the trail marker and everything, it was fine. But as soon as you left that trail, things got dire.
Well, I guess it's just the luck if you get hit by that gust.
Totally. Again, there are no excuses, but that broken runner was in the back of my head the entire time I'm trying to drive that sled, because I know that if I break that runner and that whole thing goes to the side, then I don't know what I got. Then I don't win the race. So I just tried to not use the left runner as I'm side hilling in a storm to try and keep the sled from flipping over. And I think in the process of that is when I got, and then tumbling down, and again knew if I lost the sled at that point, I would be completely screwed because they just would have went until they to the bottom, because we were still just on the side of the hill there. It wasn't the bottom of the mountain.
You lose the left runner, and you have a right wind.
Yeah, so I was in the side hill where the wind was coming this way, and my left runner was broken. So usually you want to be able to get on that left runner and push down real hard, because then it digs in and kind of keeps you going up. But instead I had to have it on this side, and then you're just like a sliding
and then
force.
You have a risk of being
like
of
that.
sliding out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then what actually happened was I was up on the side like that, and then this gust came and it took the sled like this, and there was no control, and then that's where I just started. I mean, I probably barrel rode like 3 or 4 times. Luckily I didn't hit anything in the process. And then we ended up in that position down there, and nothing fell out of my sled too, which was a good thing.
Good zippers.
So what if you got to the checkpoint and you didn't have your
Well, that's what I did right when I got in there. I hadn't really even verified that my axe was still in the sled because I was in race mode immediately. I was like, hopefully my vet book didn't come flying out during that. Like, I had looked to see. I knew the vet book was in there, but the axe I was a little bit worried about because the axe is kind of. I usually have it sticking out, but I had. Luckily, before we got into the real thick of it, I had like sort of tidied everything into the sled and zipped the zips all the way because I'm usually going and I got junk show all like unzipped and trying to get into food and everything, you know. So it's. But before I went into the storm, I sort of tightened it all up, which was a good thing because it went upside down a couple of times. So, but.
Anyway,
Yeah.
You got a good story to tell.
Yeah. That's what I told. That's what I told them. I told the outsiders or the insiders when I got down to the shelter cabin. They were like, "How you doing?" I was like, "Oh, that's just a great story. That's just gonna be an awesome story." I survived. Look, I'm here, and Dallas is still behind me, so we're all good, you know.
So in the meantime, we're sitting on the truck and we're like, he's not snacking his dogs there.
Oh, no,
he's not snacking. Is he? No, he's not.
No. I knew that there was going to be another internet blow up where what the hell is he doing? Stop.
The thing is kind of like, what the heck are you doing?
Well, it's you know the terrain there. You know that so the shelter cabin was about 7 miles away from you, and you just had to get through one more up there, and like, no, you don't stop to snack there. And especially that's a gnarly hill.
No, I was not in the right position for a snack. There was no intentions to stop where I stopped. There's no doubt about that.
At the same time, then Irving posted the video, you know, the hills from White Mountain, and you know, when you just see this white haze.
Yeah, it's crazy. That's 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 crazy.